You are watching Newsroom on SABC News. It's a warm welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, is Eben Jansen. This show is broadcast live every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Highlights are repeated at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. We're also streaming live on YouTube between 9 and 10 a.m. every day, with the entire show available on our YouTube channel all the time. That means you can watch it anywhere in the world at any time. Today, well, we look at escalating tensions in South Sudan. We deal with the future of cars that are going to talk to each other, they say. And we have Filipa in studio with us. He's the young South African that won the Ryan Seacrest talent show earlier this week. But first, here are the news headlines. President Jacob Zuma will reply to the debate on his State of the Nation address today. Opposition parties have used the debate to criticize President Zuma's address. They lashed out, saying he's heading an administration which has achieved very little since setting delivery targets. Media houses will know by next Tuesday if they may broadcast the Oscar Pistorius murder trial live. Lawyers representing the media have argued that a ban will be a violation of the freedom of expression. Opposing the application, Advocate Barry Rue told the court that broadcasting the trial live may severely intimidate potential witnesses. And Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych says he has reached an agreement with opposition leaders on a truce following the deaths of 26 people in protest clashes. The standoff between protesters and riot police continued last night in Kiev, where Yanukovych is expected to meet foreign ministers of France, Germany and Poland today. The United Nations says at least 10 people were killed in the latest outbreak of violence in Malakal, the capital of South Sudan's oil-producing Upper Nile state, between rebels and government forces. The attack on Malakal ended a lull in fighting that had lasted nearly a month. It also came as rebels and government representatives failed to restart peace talks aimed at ending the nearly 3-month conflict now. The skirmish marked the first fighting in Malakal since the rebels signed a ceasefire deal with government forces on the 23rd of January in Ethiopia. Now, to get an insight into the latest goings-on in South Sudan, we are joined in Pretoria by senior researcher at the South African Institute for Security Studies, Andrew Asamoah. Good morning, Mr. Asamoah. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Mr. Asamoah, just tell us about the latest developments. What do you make of the renewed fighting in South Sudan now?
Well, I think what we know so far is that there's been confirmed reports of renewed fighting in Malakal, as you said in your synopsis. I think what it does represent is that there's a total breakdown of the seizure of hostilities agreement that we were banking our hopes on, which then implies that, you know, the resumption of talks in Addis, which was supposed to focus on other things apart from cessation of hostilities, will have to go back to the nitty-gritties of getting the fighting forces to stop engaging each other and worsening the humanitarian crisis before they can bring on board other important matters.
I want to talk to you about the humanitarian crisis and targeted killings and ethnic cleansing that reports are coming out of there. Do you have any information on this for us?
So far, what we know is that, you know, since the whole crisis has taken ethnic lines, that has been worsening across the board. In places like Malakal, we've had reports of, you know, house-to-house searches between the different ethnic groups, particularly the Nuer and the Dinka. And I think that is where the danger lies. The fact that, you know, the two major ethnic groups are not being able, you know, to reconcile so that they can collectively work in bringing peace to the country. And I think that is where the danger lies. If you look at the history of South Sudan, they have this narrative around a Bor massacre in which so many Dinkas died. And now the rebels are trying to create another narrative around the whole issue of what is happening. And I think if that stands, the two narratives will continue to divide the people and make reconciliation in the country increasingly difficult to achieve.
What do we need for reconciliation? What is the main source of the conflict between Riek Machar and then Salva Kiir and these two sides?
No, I think before this, well, the initial thing was around the contention, the context for power within the ruling party.
Yeah.
You know, but since the outbreak of violence, I think that the rebels are demanding, first, that Ugandan troops pull out, and secondly, that some of the detainees, now we have about 4, be released. Initially, there were about 11. The government has released about 7 of them, and it's left with 4 of them. The rebels are insisting that these people be released so that they could be part of the talks in Addis Ababa. At the moment, that represents, you know, the most contentious issue, because the government of Salva Kiir is not ready to release them. And the rebels are insisting that those people have got to be released if they are going to sit around the negotiation table. And that is so far the most contentious issue around which the rebels are still engaging the government.
Could the African Union have played a stronger role in pushing this deal through and making sure that sides stick to it?
I think so far I wouldn't fault too much what has been done by the international community, particularly the African Union throwing its weight behind the IGAD process. I think within such a context, what one usually tries to achieve first is cessation of hostilities, which has been done, or which was done initially. But I think a bit more of weight needed to have been thrown and pressure required to put to try and get the two parties to respect, you know, the provisions of the cessation of hostilities agreement. I think that is where there's a bit of fault in establishing the frameworks for monitoring. And so far, the breakdown is then signifying that what has been achieved is gradually being rolled back, and that is where the trouble is. And IGAD has been able to put together a team that is doing well so far. I think what is lacking is getting the two parties to respect the cessation of hostilities agreement and to respect the fact that South Sudan depends on their collective will, you know, to come together for peace so that they can move forward as a new country.
What about the role of other countries in this conflict? The reports or accusations of Uganda helping on one side. What kind of role do these countries play, and then what do they stand to benefit?
Well, so far Uganda is there because they claim they were invited there by the legitimate government led by President Salva Kiir. And so far there are reports of them supporting the government on very many fronts in engaging the rebels. So, Uganda has a great deal of interest in South Sudan. There's a lot of flow of trade from Uganda into South Sudan. And there's also a great deal of worry, you know, about the flow of refugees into South Sudan, to Uganda. Yeah. So one gets a sense that all the countries in the region, from Kenya to Ethiopia to Sudan and Uganda, have important things to lose if, you know, the situations continue to worsen. I think that the contentious thing, however, is the fact that Uganda particularly has taken sides. And given Uganda's role in IGAD, it's then raising questions about the neutrality of IGAD, you know, as a mediating partner. Yeah. And that is where really the trouble is.
That's the trouble, but also the parties seem to be quite far apart. What do you think about the prospects for lasting peace? Are you hopeful?
Yeah, I am hopeful. This is a new country. And if you look at the history of South Sudan, the current crop of leadership have spent so much time fighting a common enemy to the extent that they've had very little time, you know, forging together a unified front for development. Yeah. And I think they are making the mistakes of a new country, and I'm hopeful that with the pressure that is coming from the international community, the cries and the suffering of the masses in South Sudan and the push by people to have peace, these leaders will come to the negotiation table and try and forge together, a common purpose for developing the new country. They cannot disappoint the whole of Africa. They cannot disappoint the world that stood behind them when they were fighting for independence. And I think that clarion call is increasingly becoming louder. And we are praying that they respond to this and sit on the negotiation table and find peace for South Sudan.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. That's senior researcher at the South African Institute for Security Studies, Andrew Azamara, giving us a little insight into the conflict, or the, renewed conflict really in South Sudan. We'll keep you updated as to how that story develops on this platform throughout the rest of the, days and weeks to come, really. Now, back to South Africa. President Jacob Zuma will reply to the debate on his State of the Nation address today. The debate on his address took a reflective mood yesterday. Ailing IFP member Mario Ambrosini pleaded with government to legalize medical marijuana for the treatment of cancer.
The charismatic MP suffers from an incurable form of cancer. He says legalizing medical marijuana could help other cancer sufferers. Ambrosini attributes his survival to it and has made an impassioned plea to government to address the issue.
No rational argument for continuing to deprive medical marijuana to people like me who need it. It is a crime against humanity not to allow that to take place.
And it appears it's found resonance with the ruling party.
We are very keenly following up on the discussion and research around the world on the issue of the potential of legalizing, decriminalizing medical marijuana. We're a caring society.
As opposition parties poke holes into President Zuma's address, the ruling party's big guns defended the message, saying this government has done more to make the country a better place to live in. Mzwanele Mbethe, SABC News, Parliament.
Opposition parties under the banner of collective democracy have laid criminal charges against the SABC's acting chief operating officer, Claudi Motsoeneng, at the Rosebank police station in Johannesburg yesterday. This follows Public Protector Thuli Madonsela's report on maladministration at the public broadcaster. The report found that Motsoeneng committed fraud by claiming that he had passed matric, but the ANC has accused the opposition of jumping the gun.
COPE, the IFP, ACDP, PAC, Freedom Front Plus and the United Christian Democratic Party say they're concerned about the issues raised in the Public Protector's report on the SABC. They also claim the SABC is being used as a political tool.
Under its current leadership, specifically the acting COO, Claudi Motsoeneng, SABC has systematically sanitized most information that is critical of the Zuma administration.
But the SABC says the allegations of political bias are untrue.
Unfortunately, we get this kind of comments every time there are elections. And I think the public must not be fooled into this kind of comments, because what we do as a public broadcaster is what is governed by ICASA and by the IEC in relation to the coverage of the elections. Therefore, there are rules that are put in place where we give equitable coverage to political parties, and equitable is clearly not equal. It is based on the formula that has been created, but all the political parties have agreed to it. Therefore, it cannot be true that we are giving one an advantage over the other.
The Collective for Democracy has also called on the Minister, the Board and the Communications Portfolio Committee to act on the Public Protector's report.
It should also ensure that the SABC board recovers all monies that were irregularly spent through the unlawful and improper actions from appropriate persons.
But the ANC caucus in Parliament has accused these opposition parties of jumping the gun.
The action that they are taking comes across as populist and some kind of political rhetoric. And also it is tantamount to putting the cart before the horse. I think they should hold on their horses so that they allow the due process as part of this institution to unfold.
Communications Minister Yunus Karim has already said he had referred the Public Protector's report to the Chief State Law Advisor. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
Well, let's take a quick look at what you're talking about or saying on social media. Of course, at SABC Newsroom on Twitter, that's where you can send your contributions to. And Moya Harbo says, Dagga to be legalized in South Africa. Parliament is seriously considering this debate. That is absolutely correct. Yes, it's industry and also for medical reasons. Just Eric says, legalize Dagga for cancer patients. IFP MP Mario Riani Ambrosini. Mzukulu Wamajobe says, the Cancer Association of South Africa clearly doesn't agree with the IFP's Dr. Mario Rianio Ambrosini. Mleleke Dube says, the discussion in Parliament of legalizing Dagga is really going to confuse many Dagga smokers because it will only be used for medication, not to smoke. I think it will be smoked either way, for medical reasons or otherwise. After a short break, Anton Meyer will look at the Boers at the end of the world. A very unique story that's about to hit our screens here in South Africa. Don't go away. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
The suspended Chief Financial Officer of Telkom, Jacques Skindenhutter, has spoken out about his suspension. The profits of transport and logistics parastatal Transnet are steaming ahead. They jumped by a whopping 71% in the first 6 months of this year.
We have experienced 26% growth in containers and automotive.
Investors have been cheering the results of Pick n Pay. The food retailer's share price shot up by nearly 8% after it reported a close to 14% rise in profits for the first half of the year.
That's business news, weekdays at 8 p.m. on SABC News.
Hello and welcome to Network. My name is Sphumelele Zondi.
Currently, we've got 3 apps that we've developed: the Q Marshall app, a commuter app, and a taxi association app.
The Chinese e-commerce company Alibaba Group Holding has decided to pursue an IPO in New York. Safaricom wants to introduce M-Pesa to Kenya's popular matatu industry. This will enable commuters to pay taxi fares using mobile money.
That's Network, Sundays, 7:30 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom on SABC News. Time for us to take a look now at what's been happening in the online space and on the social media front. And joining me is SABC Digital News Production Editor Bongi Mukhale. Always nice to have you with us, Bongi.
Nice to be back here, then.
Interesting week. It's always an interesting week in the digital space, isn't it? But I wanted to ask you about this Vertical 4 video and the sort of uptake around it and how people responded to that. Must have been quite hectic.
Yes, it was. I mean, to consider that the video, when it was put up, it went viral. Yeah, is the first indication of just how much this captured the attention of the public. We've got this on our site today. Well, as of yesterday, we knew that the 72 hours had elapsed for the Department of Corrections to finish its investigations. Yeah. And now what we've got, the update that we have is that they've got to stay now in prison for 2 weeks until when they're deciding whether they're going to revoke their parole or whether it's going to be they'll be just reinstated and let off perhaps with a warning. And lots of people have got lots of stuff to say about this, of course. People are upset, first of all, that they only served 6 years of a sentence for murder. Yeah. That's the first thing. The second thing is people are saying, how stupid were these people to come and video, and the arrogance that it would take to come and video yourselves drinking in prison. And there's also the money factor, that if you were just Thabo whoever, you're going to stay in prison. You're not going to get alcohol. It's just too bad for you.
I'm sure people are a little bit alarmed. We covered this story earlier in the week. People must be a little bit alarmed that you can pay your way in prison.
Yes, people are. What we've also shedding some light on this further is that on today's forum, the forum at 8, which is on SAFM, they're discussing this topic, and we're going to be clipping some of this to put on the website. But people can also access it on the SAFM's channel on Iono to go and listen to what is it. Why does it seem that when you've got money, it will just dictate that your life is going to go much smoother?
Well, we covered this story early in the week of Newsroom. Of course, we're always ahead of the curve here on Newsroom, Bongi. But let's talk about the State of the Nation address. There must have been a lot of traffic online.
A lot.
People must have had a lot to say, especially after the opposition parties, the sort of line they took against the president. What did people say about the president? The president was all smiley and giggly in Parliament and in very good space.
Well, to summarize it, it was along the lines of, what cloud cuckoo land is he living in? Not my words, but that's just a summary of it all. That things are not as rosy as the president is saying. This line of, the narrative of it's a good story, we've got a good story going on, people are not buying that. The opposition parties are not buying it. So we've got this up.
But opposition parties are not going to buy whatever you tell them anyhow.
Well, I suppose there's a point to be made there. We've got the threats from the DA about impeaching him, and lots of people have got a lot of stuff to say to respond to the president on this. Well, he now is going to have his chance to get back at them. They've been debating over the past 2 days, and this afternoon at about 2 p.m. he's going to be replying in Parliament, so people will be able to see this live stream on our site, and I think on the SABC channels also.
Yeah, it's on all the SABC platforms. We'll have it this afternoon. That's the SONA address, of course, the President's response to, after taking 2 days of a caning at the hands of the opposition parties in Parliament. The President, of course, will give his response a little bit later today, and you can watch it on this very channel if you've missed it. I wanted to just quickly wrap that up. Tell us about how you guys look at covering that, and maybe looking ahead to the budget speech next week, and what people can be looking forward to.
Well, we've got a full special report on the SONA State of the Nation address last week. We've got plenty of multimedia, galleries, audio, video, whatever you can imagine. What we also have that's quite special, it actually belongs to Parliament, but with their permission, we've got a link to it on our site. It's Parliament's virtual tour. So you can go and have a look at everything that's on there.
There we go, that's fantastic. That's the virtual tour.
That's the virtual tour of Parliament that's on the screens currently. I think it's quite special, really. So, because how many of us are actually going to get an opportunity to go there? You can go and have a look at it here. We've got it accessible via our site.
Yeah, I said these are pictures coming off the parliamentary website. Is that right?
Yes.
So people get an insight as to where everything be happening, what's where, who's where. I saw there were some lovely pictures of gardens outside and so forth. And what other facilities?
I think it's just about everything you can picture there in Parliament, basically. If you look at I think you get a sense of the entire parliamentary precinct that's there, and the surrounds of it also, So it's not the same as being there for the real thing, but I think it's a close enough approximation.
And then with the budget speech, of course, people are always worried about their money.
Yeah.
How are you guys going to have advice for people? Are we going to see some folk coming in and telling us to save again? We don't save.
We always have there's tips for province and tips for Pravin. Or it was tips for Trevor. I think it's pointers for Pravin now.
Yeah, it's for Pravin.
Yeah. So what we would have is just to invite people to say, well, what would you like to see going into the budget? We're going to have like a mini special report put up of that. Obviously, we'll be streaming the budget address at 2 p.m. on the 26th of February when it's delivered.
That's on Wednesday.
Yes, and obviously that is when we'll also be able to say to kind of people, well, does this mean that, well, there goes the vodka now, you're going to have to cut back perhaps on some of the things that you like to do? We know that the syntaxes always go up.
Syntax always goes up, but as my friends would say, at 1,000 rand a litre, whiskey would still be a bargain. That's at least what the sentiment I think that South Africans say. Share. Just tell us finally about Africa Connected and how this plays out on our site?
Okay, we are actually partners along with Google in this. And what it is basically an online innovation in Africa. They've announced the 10 finalists now, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
We have a South African, Timothy Maguire. He's one of the 10 finalists, and people have now the chance to vote for the 5 overall winners. I can tell you a little bit about what Timothy's work is. He does a lot of work in Mozambique with providing the people there with clean drinking water.
Okay.
And he doesn't speak Portuguese, unfortunately, which is the predominant language in Mozambique. So he uses Google Translate to translate all of his emails and to be able to communicate with the people there so that he can do his work better, which is just a way to just show how you can use technology in an innovative way to help communities.
That is brilliant. And then, of course, I mean, we run out of time now, Bongi, but there's also the other stuff, the Winter Olympics, there's entertainment. We've got Filipa on our show a little bit later. You've got her on the site as well.
Yes.
So, fantastic stuff. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I see you've even got Boite's backside on the site. Is that right?
Yes, that was just for you.
It's taking a bit of...
Just a special, just for you.
You're bringing a bit of traffic or not?
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, if you want to see Boite's, what do you call it? Boite's booty?
Something like that.
Boite's booty, okay. Thank you, Bongi, for joining us today. Bongi is a production editor with SABC Digital News, where you can get, well, all of the very best in one place, in one site. That is on our digital platform. Anton Meyer is standing by with a very interesting story and an even more interesting guest. Anton.
Thank you very much, Eben. Over a century ago, more than 600 Boer families left South Africa and sailed to Argentina, escaping a war they had just lost and a government they didn't want. The Boers found a land that reminded them of the Karoo Desert in the Patagonia region. Today, this outpost still exists. They speak archaic Afrikaans, bake meltert, attend the NG Kerk on Sundays, and sing the old Boer songs. Despite the fierce pride in their roots, the culture has been eroded over time, and only a handful still speak their mother tongue. Local filmmaker Richard Gregory last month travelled to the community to document their unique story. And he joins us today in our Cape Town studio. But before we cross to Richard, let's take a look at the trailer for the documentary.
Je ziet oorlog komt klip uit van, dat is versteende bomen. Dat is miljoenen jaren oud zeilen. Zo zal de Afrikaners ook hier ook zo versteen blij. De Afrikaners zijn gekomen in de jaren 1908. Hier is het land Comodoro, hier is de plek wat we afgeklemd.
Na die oorlog, maar toen die oorlog verloren heeft met die Engelsen, toen we niet onder die vlag gestaan het niet zelden daar zo niet.
Maar toen we hier komen, is niks niet, is niks gaat. Dat is baie moeilijk vallen geweest, baie moeilijk. Ons is nou op pad naar mijn plaats toe. Ons gaan dan meer wat 3 uur, zoals ons nu gaan, zoals daar komen. Ah ja.
Richard, thank you very much for joining us. I want to start, how did you find out about the community in Argentina?
Well, a friend told me about it about a year and a half ago, and being a documentary filmmaker, I'm always keeping my eyes and ears open for great stories, and this immediately struck me as a pretty incredible story. So I started doing a little bit of research and realized that it wasn't very well known in South Africa that these guys went over there all this time ago. And so that's when I knew, I've got to make a film out of this. I've got to follow up on this. And my breakthrough moment came when, I'd been doing research and trying to find out how to get hold of these guys. And it was through Facebook. I actually managed to find some of the descendants of the original Boers. And they said to me, come on over here and I'll introduce you to my parents. They still speak Afrikaans as their first language. And things just kind of snowballed from there.
Now, you went there last month in January. How was your visit and how did they receive you in Argentina?
The visit was amazing. You know, Argentine people are very hospitable to begin with, and when I went over there and they found that there was a South African in town, the hospitality was incredible. Every night I had dinner with another family, and you know, everyone would phone around the town and tell them that there was a South African in town. You could speak Afrikaans with them, and they were incredibly warm and welcoming. And it was great because I could feel a lot of the same warmth that you find from, you know, perhaps a Karoo community or another Afrikaans community. So it felt very comfortable. You know, the one thing that I was a little concerned about at first is, you know, me speaking English as my first language and them having gone over there originally to get away from being under British rule. I was wondering if there's any sort of lingering resentment that I'd find there, and it wasn't the case at all. It was pretty incredible. You know, right off the bat, they just welcomed me and said, well, all that matters is that you can speak Afrikaans to us, we enjoy each other's company, we bonded over endless cups of mate tea, and they really just welcomed me as a fellow South African, as part of their family.
Did you pick up any cultural and language differences between Afrikaners in South Africa and the Afrikaners in Argentina?
Well, the language was actually more similar to the Afrikaans we have in South Africa than I expected it to be. I thought it might be a lot closer to Dutch, which would mean it's more difficult for me to understand. But the minute I started chatting to them, it sounded more like perhaps a Karoo accent, you know. And the differences I found were more in the appearance. It was quite surreal to see these old guys. Most of them are sheep farmers, and they dress in their neck scarves and their bombacho trousers like Argentine cowboys, like gauchos. And but when they open their mouths, they sound like you could be in the middle of the Karoo rather than in the middle of Patagonia. So that was a sort of interesting experience to see.
Now, the funding for your documentary, it's quite unique. Can you just walk us through how you got the funding to make this documentary?
Well, I think I was speaking to some filmmakers about it yesterday and saying, you know, if this was maybe 5 or 7 years ago, I probably wouldn't be able to make the film the way I have. It started out being crowdfunded to get some initial development money. So I set up a fund on Indiegogo. It's a crowdfunding website, and lots of people contributed to raise some money to enable me to go over and start the project. So what I've done so far is I've shot enough to create a short film out of it, and that's a proof of concept to show that there's an amazing story there, the characters are great, and to raise interest in it. And so far that's worked really well. So where we are now is we're on the fundraising stage to go back and shoot the full feature-length film, and we're hoping that within the next 6 months or so that funding will be in place and we can resume filming.
So we can expect the film in, let's say, 6 months?
Ooh, I wish. No, I think that's a bit optimistic. Unfortunately, these things do take time, and we're also about to go into winter in Patagonia, and that's a pretty miserable time to be there. A lot of the roads are closed to the farms because of snow, so we can't film in the next 6 months even if we wanted to. So the earliest we'll be able to go back is probably around September, October, then with all the post-production needed to go into it. Optimistically, I'm hoping it'll be done by the middle of 2015. So people are just going to have to bear with me. I know people are very impatient to see more.
Richard, I look forward to the film. Thank you very much for joining us today, and good luck with the processing and the rest of the project.
Thank you very much.
Eben, I hand back to you now.
Thank you, Anton. Yeah, that's a very interesting story. I'm sure we'll keep an eye on that one here in South Africa. Very interesting story. We would have known that we've got people, Afrikaans speaking South Africans, living in Argentina for more than 100 years and still got most of their culture intact. Very interesting. Let's take a quick look, or before we go to a break, take a look at what you're talking about on social media. And Tom Vicente says, to be honest, I'm not really for the Oscar Pistorius trial being televised. It's literally adding a second judge to the matter. Well, there'll be 52 million judges in this country, my dear. Jenny Petzold says, I don't think the world needs a prop-up TV channel covering the Oscar Pistorius trial 24/7. So overtly sensationalist, just tacky. Sorry, Jenny. It is that level of interest that it's got. Minhaj Gina says, guys, I can't wait for the Oscar Pistorius channel to start. That is pretty much the sentiment, I think, that is all around the country and all around the world. People are interested in the story. It is that big a news story. I wonder what the going rate for an ad on the Oscar Pistorius channel might be. Well, the standard rates would apply, Gary, I would think. Jenny Freem talks. Looks like the Oscar Pistorius trial will be allowed to be broadcast live. Well, Jenny, I can confirm that we'll only know that at 11 o'clock on Tuesday, the 25th of February. That's when the judge will rule in that case. After a short break, well, we meet Filipa. South Africa's latest singing sensation. Of course, it's not Anton Meyer. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
On Wednesday, the 26th of February, Minister Pravin Gordhan tables the 2014 budget plan, and your front row seat is on the SABC News channel, live at 2 p.m. On Wednesday, the 26th of February, Minister Pravin Gordhan tables the 2014 budget plan, and your front row seat is on the SABC News channel, live at 2 p.m.
Welcome back to your Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a quick look at the stories making news headlines. President Jacob Zuma will reply to the debate on his State of the Nation address today. Opposition parties have used the debate to criticize President Zuma's address. They lashed out, saying he's heading an administration which has achieved very little. Media houses will know by next Tuesday if they may broadcast the Oscar Pistorius murder trial live. Lawyers representing the media have argued that a ban will be a violation of freedom of expression. Opposing the application, Advocate Barry Rood told the court that broadcasting the trial live may severely intimidate potential witnesses. And Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych says he has reached an agreement with opposition leaders on a truce following the deaths of 26 people in protest clashes. The standoff between protesters and riot police continued last night in Kiev, where Yanukovych is expected to meet foreign ministers of France, Germany and Poland later today. It only gets better here on Newsroom. United States regulators are crafting a rule that would require all new vehicles to be able to talk to one another using wireless technology by 2017, which, according to the country's Department of Transportation, would significantly reduce accidents on U.S. roads and alleviate traffic congestion. Now, we really need that here in South Africa. In our studio today, well, not in our studio, we are joined by the editor of Car Magazine, Steve Smith in Cape Town. Thanks, Steve. Good morning.
Morning, Eben.
How's the story? Interesting. 2017, do you think we'd be able to pull it off in South Africa without killing one another?
I don't know with South African drivers what kind of technology you might need to prevent the stuff that happens on our roads. But look, I think the new technology will go some way to doing it for sure. It's also not something that's really that new or that difficult to understand as well. And really, it's basically revolves around this, which is your cell phone.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at now and what we're seeing the big car brands develop is technology where your cars are linked via a cellular network to the internet and have the ability, therefore, to talk to one another. And that's the basis of this new technology called the connected car, which the major brands are all developing. It's that together with autonomous driving, which cars that can drive themselves. So it's those two new technologies that are really on the horizon for us, on the very near horizon, which I think worldwide are going to make a massive difference.
So it sounds perfect for South Africa, Steve. You know, people don't talk to each other on the roads in this country. So maybe the cars should start talking on our behalf. 2017 in America, when do you think we should see that kind of thing hitting our shores?
Look, it's really not that dependent on individual country legislation. It's really about the car brands who are developing these things for their cars. So it's almost a sort of technology track that happens alongside whatever government might want to do. So, the likes of the luxury car brands already are developing cars that will link to your cell phone, that you can download all your apps to, that are linked via GPS to a map system that, are all talking to each other. So it's really around the corner for us. I mean, I've driven a car in the US, or in Canada actually, the new S-Class Mercedes, where the car basically drove itself for 40 kilometers without any input from me. So this stuff is there already. It's just, I think legislation is a step or two behind. You can imagine the kind of insurance issues around any accidents that might potentially happen.
Absolutely.
So the technology's there, it's legislation that's lacking.
Must change the game completely. It brings us to South Africa, and there's always a cost element, I would think. Do you think that affordability in South Africa would see us implement it sooner rather than later, or is this a barrier?
Look, cost is always a barrier in South Africa, and I think the cost of our cars are fairly expensive. And when you get new technology introduced, which we'll see electric cars very soon. Well, Nissan has already launched one in South Africa. BMW's really exciting new i3 will be here, I think midway or towards the end of the year. The cars are not cheap. And that's with any new technology, you're going to have some barrier to entry. But the fact is, the cars will be here. It's just a question of how many South Africans can afford them.
I want to talk about affordability and why cars in South Africa are so expensive. Or am I being controversial?
Well, yeah, it is. You're putting me on the spot here a little bit. Look, I think there are many unanswered questions about that. The cost of our labour isn't the cheapest around, and we've seen some fairly disruptive union strikes hitting the car industry really heavily towards the end of last year. So it's that kind of stuff that pushes the price up. I think those questions, though, you'd probably have to direct more, or you have to ask more directly to the car brands. I think they can tell you why their cars are that expensive.
There's an election on May the 7th this year, Steve. You'll do very well there, my friend. Finally, just tell us, or just give us your take on this kind of technology and how you see it really changing the lives of people and changing the game and the way we travel in the sort of medium term.
I think there are two very interesting things for me. One is it's going to improve road safety. So if you have cars that talk to each other, cars that can know when the cars ahead are braking and therefore brake for you, and essentially drive yourself, we're going to have less accidents. There's no question about that. I mean, you won't even need robots anymore. Cars will go through an intersection knowing where the other cars are. There'll be no accidents. The downside, obviously, is the kind of big brother scenario. So if you have cars that are connected and talking to a network, it means that you can also be monitored. So that is the downside. That does worry me a little bit.
Steve, don't be worried, Steve.
Personally, I think the safety is better.
Don't be worried, Steve. We're being monitored 24/7 already, and it's getting worse as we speak. Thanks for joining us. That is the editor of Car Magazine, Steve Smith, giving us a sort of looking into how transport is going to be, how your transport is going to be changing in the next decade. At least cars are talking to each other now, and they're going to be driving all on their own. You're just going to have to sit back, and you might even be able to have a drink while you're at it, because you won't be driving, so it won't be drink driving. Think about it. Now, finally, last month we brought you South Africa's own YouTube sensation, Filipa, who was one of the finalists in the RyanSeacrest.com search for the best One Direction cover of this smash hit Story of My Life. Well, she won, and she walked away with top honors ahead of 2 X Factor finalists, no less. The competition, which began in January with 26 finalists, was driven by public vote, and each week a number of contestants were eliminated. Before I talk to Filipa, because she's with us, let's just take a look at a little clip of the video. I think it's absolutely magnificent.
Written in these walls are the stories that I can't explain. I leave my heart open, but it stays right here empty for days. You told me in the morning he don't feel the same about us in his bones. Seems to me pray that when I die, these words will be written on my stone. And I'll be gone, gone tonight.
Story of My Life. That's the One Direction cover by Filipa, who's in studio here with us. You can get it on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It's really worth a watch. And she's won the RyanSeacrest.com search. You must still be buzzing today.
I am. I'm still buzzing. I've been living off coffee, haven't had much sleep, but I'm so happy.
Now, it's sort of a life-changing event. Just tell me how things have been playing out the last couple of days and how busy things are going to get now for you the next couple of weeks, I would think.
Well, it's just been basically a lot of media coverage for the past few days and a lot of support. Everyone has just been so supportive and amazing. It's been a great experience for me. I'm really busy. Yeah. And hopefully I will be bringing out my single in March, in the middle of March, which is really exciting. So I'm working for that.
Okay, so you're pretty much all around the clock working very hard. And what's the family saying and the friends? I mean, now that, you know, their friend and their daughter, sister is suddenly a superstar. What?
They're so happy for me. I mean, I have a great bunch of friends and a great supportive family, always behind me, and they've just shown me a lot of love and support. And, you know, of course, they're very proud of me, which is, you know, all that I could hope for.
And you know, when you got the call, who called you? Did you get a call from Ryan Seacrest?
No, no. I found out because you had to monitor the website and just basically check, and they put it up on the website that I was the winner. And then my PR did have a Skype call last night with the RyanSeacrest.com team, and they were just really congratulating me. They were just being great and said, you know what, congratulations, this is a huge accolade. So it's really great. That's
top notch, really, really well done. Now, what happens next? What happens now? You're going to the States, are you going to be working with Timberland and other big artists? What happens next for you?
At the moment, there's nothing set in stone, but I'm just really working hard on my single, and we'll see what happens from there. Just really trying to work hard, getting myself out there, and also trying to study, so balance the studying and that out. But yeah, for the meantime, just really working hard on getting that single out.
How's that going to play out? You're still studying? What are you studying?
Yes.
And then how are you going to balance this?
Drama and musical theatre, so it's crazy, but I think I just need to really try my best to balance them out. You know, of course, my studying is extremely important to me as well, just as my music career. So I need to find a balance and just, you know, do my best to do both and give as much effort and attention to both.
Don't worry, there's 24 hours in a day. You'll be able to pull it off, you know. You can sleep when you die, is what my father always told me. Now, just tell me about this competition. What sort of ties in with it? What are the benefits of winning it, and what does that mean for you going forward?
Well, at the moment, it's just the accolade and the exposure is fantastic. So already having been in the competition, participating, it's just been huge already. So, I mean, it's given me so much exposure and put me on a platform that's incredible. And winning it was just, it's just changed everything. Yeah. You know, it's just, I think it's given me, you know, a boost to really like try and get myself out there and really try.
Well, you're out there. You're out there now. You're well out there. So tell me about the response here in South Africa. What's been the response like officially? And you must be like almost on a roadshow at the moment.
No, it's great. The response has been phenomenal. South Africans are so supportive, and like I said, you know, it's a lot of media coverage. So it's been great. It's just. Yeah, like I haven't slept for like a week. Yeah. So, but it's been great. It's really so supportive, so much love, and just it's really made me so happy.
So how are you keeping a lid on things? How are you not going to lose it over the next couple of weeks?
I think generally I'm quite a relaxed person, so I just try and calm myself down. And you know, this is just so amazing for me. You know, it's like the happiest time of my life. So you know, I'm really coping well. You know, it's all good. Some coffee, and that's all I need.
Well, you're doing fantastically well. Calm yourself down to a mild panic, and everything else will sort of everything else will sort of fall in place. Filipa, fantastic. You've done brilliantly well. It's a great video. I love it. And I think, and I hope, and we wish you all the best here from Newsroom, because you really deserve it. Of course, she's won the RyanSeacrest.com. Search for the best One Direction cover on YouTube. If you haven't watched it, go and look at the story of my life. Filipa here with us in studio. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Brilliant. Always very nice to to be with Filipa. That's where we wrap it. The show is broadcast live every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Highlights are then repeated at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following morning. We also stream live on YouTube between 9 and 10 every morning with the entire show available all day on our YouTube channel, so you can watch it anywhere in the world all of the time. You're watching SABC News. This is Newsroom. We love it in the morning.
Good afternoon, you're watching the news at 1.
Now, one of South Africa's largest education departments has a new boss.
I will also motivate learners to love learning.
Yesterday, the lobby group lost yet another court bid to have the system halted.
Global wealth has risen by